Don't you dare! You're not going to deny me this opportunity, I said, my voice rising as I stood in Thomas Miller's office doorway. The department head looked up from his desk with a satisfied grin that made my stomach turn. After a decade of dedicated service to Peterson Engineering, this was how it would end? My name is Kaylee Thompson, and at 52, I've spent the last 10 years of my career at one of San Francisco's leading engineering firms. Through 3 company restructures, 2 economic downturns, and countless late nights perfecting designs, I had proven myself invaluable, or so I thought. Kaylee, please sit down. Thomas motioned to the chair across from his desk, his voice carrying that rehearsed sympathy that HR must teach in management training. We're bringing in someone younger for your role. After 10 years, it's time to move on. The words hung in the air between us. Someone younger. Not someone more qualified or experienced, just younger. I felt the familiar heat of indignation rising in my chest, but took a deep breath instead. This wasn't the time for an emotional outburst. I nodded calmly. I appreciate the notice, Thomas. My muted response clearly wasn't what he expected. Thomas blinked, momentarily thrown off script. Well, good. I'm glad you understand. The transition will take place over the next month. We'll need you to train your replacement, Olivia. She graduates from Berkeley next week. I smiled thinly. Of course. What Thomas didn't know, what nobody in the department knew, was that the next board meeting would be special. Very special indeed. Will there be a formal announcement? I asked, my voice steady. We'll announce it at the department meeting on Monday, Thomas replied, already turning his attention back to his computer screen, dismissing me. HR will be in touch about your severance package. I stood up and smoothed my blazer. I see. And the quarterly board meeting is still next Thursday at 2 p.m.? Thomas looked up, confusion flickering across his face. Yes, but that's not something you need to concern yourself with anymore. Just double-checking my calendar, I said lightly. Will CEO Davis be in attendance? Thomas's eyes narrowed slightly. Why do you ask? Just curious, I replied with a shrug. Well, I won't take up any more of your time. As I walked out of his office, I felt strangely calm. 10 years at Peterson Engineering had taught me patience, resilience, and the importance of knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. The next board meeting would reveal everything, and Thomas Miller's smug satisfaction would evaporate faster than morning fog on the bay. Some secrets were worth keeping, even when you were being shown the door. As I walked back to my desk, I couldn't help but smile at the irony of it all. 10 years of dedication reduced to a casual dismissal in a 15-minute meeting. Yet here I was, holding on to information that would completely flip the script. Everything okay? Asked Javier, my colleague from the adjacent cubicle. His eyes held genuine concern. He'd seen too many people walk that same path from Thomas's office, faces drawn with shock and disappointment. Never better, I replied, voice low enough to avoid attracting attention. Just the usual Friday drama. I hadn't told anyone about the private meeting with CEO Catherine Davis 3 weeks ago. It had been unexpected. A call directly to my personal cell on a Sunday afternoon while I was tending to my rooftop garden. Kaylee, we need to talk about your future at Peterson, Catherine had said, her normally formal tone relaxed and direct. Not at the office. Can you meet me at Bayview Cafe tomorrow at 7 a.m.? The memory of that morning was still vivid. Catherine had arrived early, securing a private corner table with a stunning view of the Golden Gate Bridge shrouded in morning mist. I'll get straight to the point, she'd said after we exchanged pleasantries. The board is restructuring our leadership approach. We've been watching your work on the Westlake project. Your innovative solutions saved us millions and impressed our biggest clients. I'd been preparing for bad news, not praise. Thank you, but we want you on the executive board, Catherine had continued, as our new chief operations officer. You understand both the technical and human elements of our business in a way nobody else does. The offer had been unexpected and overwhelming. A seat on the board, overseeing all operational aspects of Peterson Engineering, including Thomas's department. "Why me?" I'd asked, still processing the magnitude of the opportunity. "Because you see what others miss," Catherine had replied simply. "And because it's time we had someone at the table who remembers what it's like to be in the trenches." The secrecy had been Catherine's idea. "The board vote is just a formality, but I need to manage the politics carefully. Some members, particularly those with connections to Thomas, might try to interfere if they knew beforehand. So I'd signed the contract with only Catherine and the company's legal counsel present. For 3 weeks, I'd attended early morning strategy sessions disguised as vendor meetings in my calendar. I'd reviewed confidential reports and helped draft a new operational framework after hours, all while Thomas plotted my removal. Back at my desk, I checked my phone. A message from Catherine. "Contracts filed. Announcement prepared. Still on for Thursday." I texted back a single thumbs-up emoji. For the rest of the afternoon, I diligently worked on transition notes for my supposed replacement. Thomas passed by twice, looking pleased with himself each time. Let him enjoy this moment of perceived victory. The real revelation was just 6 days away. The weekend dragged on endlessly as I prepared for what would undoubtedly be the most consequential week of my career. On Monday morning, I arrived at the office early, dressed in the same professional attire I'd worn for years, nothing that would signal the impending change in my status. The department meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. in the main conference room. I took my usual seat near the middle of the table, not too prominent, not too hidden. As engineers and project managers filtered in, the room buzzed with the usual Monday morning energy, conversations about weekend activities, project deadlines, and industry gossip. Thomas entered last, followed by a young woman I'd never seen before. She couldn't have been older than 23, with a nervous smile and wide eyes that took in the room with undisguised excitement. "Good morning, everyone," Thomas announced, clapping his hands together. "Before we dive into project updates, I have an important announcement." The room quieted immediately. Several of my colleagues glanced in my direction, sensing what was coming. "I'd like to introduce Olivia Parker, who will be joining our team as senior design engineer. Over the next month, she'll be working closely with Kaylee, who will be leaving us to pursue other opportunities." There it was, the corporate euphemism for being pushed out. I kept my expression neutral as curious and sympathetic looks turned my way. "Kaylee has been with us for 10 years, Thomas continued, his tone suggesting he was bestowing a great honor upon me by acknowledging my service. "And we appreciate her contributions. Please make Olivia feel welcome as she transitions into this important role." Olivia gave a small wave. "I'm really excited to join the team. I've heard so many great things about Peterson Engineering." As the meeting progressed through project updates and quarterly targets, I noticed Thomas watching me carefully, perhaps expecting an outburst or sign of distress. Instead, I participated normally, offering insights on my current projects and volunteering to help with a challenging client issue. After the meeting, Olivia approached me tentatively. "Ms. Thompson, Thomas said you'd be showing me the ropes this week." "Of course," I replied, gesturing for her to follow me to my workspace. "And please, call me Kaylee." As we walked, I felt a pang of sympathy for Olivia. She was merely a pawn in Thomas's game, unaware of the complicated dynamics she'd stepped into. "First thing you should know," I said once we reached my desk, "is that engineering at Peterson is as much about politics as it is about technical skill." Olivia looked surprised by my frankness. I thought it would be more merit-based." I smiled. "It should be. Maybe someday it will be again." The next 3 days passed in a blur of knowledge transfer sessions, project handoffs, and careful documentation of my workflow. Through it all, I maintained my professional demeanor, giving Olivia every advantage I could without revealing my true circumstances. On Wednesday afternoon, Catherine called a company-wide meeting for Friday morning, the day after the board meeting. The email mentioned exciting organizational changes and new leadership announcements. Thomas read the message with a frown, clearly not privy to whatever Catherine had planned. Do you know what this is about? He asked me casually as he passed my desk. No idea. I lied smoothly. Perhaps they've finally found someone to fill that VP position that's been vacant. He nodded, satisfied with my ignorance, and walked away. Thursday was approaching rapidly, and with it, the moment of truth. Thursday morning arrived with a strange sense of calm washing over me. I'd prepared for this day meticulously, choosing my outfit with particular care. A tailored charcoal suit I'd purchased for the occasion, accented with a subtle jade silk blouse that brought out the green in my eyes. It was an executive look, though no one would question it as being particularly out of character for me. I arrived at work to find my going-away party in full swing, a sad spread of supermarket cupcakes and lukewarm coffee in the break room. My colleagues had signed a card with generic well wishes and memories of projects we'd tackled together. I accepted their condolences with grace, playing my part in this corporate theater. "We'll miss you around here," said Javier, giving me an awkward side hug. "It won't be the same without your problem-solving magic." "Thank you," I replied, meaning it. Many of these people were genuine colleagues who had no part in Thomas's machinations. I'll miss this team too. Thomas stood at the edge of the gathering, checking his watch frequently. The board meeting was at 2 p.m., and as department head, he'd need to prepare his quarterly presentation. I knew exactly what was in it. I'd helped design the reporting framework years ago. "Kaylee, could I see you in my office when you're done here?" he asked, not waiting for an answer before walking away. 15 minutes later, I sat across from him, watching as he shuffled papers on his desk. "I wanted to thank you for handling this transition so professionally," he said without looking up. "It's refreshing considering your tenure with the company." The slight emphasis on tenure made it clear what he really meant: my age. It seemed the appropriate response, I replied evenly. Thomas finally met my eyes. "Your severance package is generous. 2 months' salary, plus your unused vacation time. The paperwork will be ready for your signature tomorrow." "I appreciate that." He leaned back in his chair, curiosity finally getting the better of him. "I have to ask, you've been surprisingly calm about all this. Did you see it coming?" I allowed myself a small, enigmatic smile. Let's just say I've learned to prepare for all contingencies in my time here. Thomas's expression hardened slightly. "Well, company needs evolve. Fresh perspectives become necessary. I'm sure you understand." "Completely," I agreed. "Change is inevitable in any organization. Sometimes it comes from unexpected directions." His eyes narrowed at my cryptic response, but before he could press further, his phone buzzed with a reminder. "I need to prepare for the board meeting." "Of course," I said, standing to leave. "Good luck with your presentation. I've always found the board to be quite attentive to details." As I walked out, I could feel his eyes on my back, a new uncertainty in his gaze. My calm acceptance had planted a seed of doubt, exactly as I'd intended. Back at my desk, I fielded a text from Catherine. "Conference room A, 1:30. Come through the executive entrance." I spent the next 2 hours meticulously organizing my desk, backing up personal files, and creating detailed instructions for Olivia. To anyone watching, I was simply being thorough before my departure. At 1:15, I picked up my leather portfolio and headed toward the restroom, a perfectly normal afternoon activity that wouldn't raise suspicions. Once out of sight from the engineering department, I changed course, taking the elevator to the top floor where senior executives had their offices. The executive suite had its own private entrance to the boardroom, a door that I had never had cause to use in my 10 years with the company. Until today. Catherine was waiting for me in the hallway, her normally serious face softened with anticipation. "Ready to make history?" she asked quietly. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Perfect," she replied, checking her watch. "The other board members are already seated. Thomas will enter through the main door at exactly 2 p.m. Let's make sure we're in position before then." Together, we walked toward the executive entrance to Conference Room A, where everything was about to change. The boardroom of Peterson Engineering exuded power and tradition. 12 high-backed leather chairs surrounded an immense mahogany table that had witnessed decades of critical decisions. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of San Francisco's skyline, a constant reminder of the heights to which the company had climbed. By 1:45 p.m., 10 board members were already seated, engaged in pre-meeting small talk. Catherine nodded subtly toward an empty chair on her right, my designated seat. I felt a momentary flutter of nerves as I took my place, but it quickly subsided as several board members smiled in recognition. William Harrison, the 70-year-old chairman of the board, extended his hand. "Ms. Thompson, we're delighted to finally have you join us officially. Catherine has spoken highly of your operational insights." "Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I appreciate the opportunity," I replied, my voice steady despite the significance of the moment. For the next 10 minutes, I was introduced to each board member. Most knew me by reputation or from previous project presentations, but this interaction was different. I was now their peer, not a subordinate reporting up the chain. At precisely 2 p.m., the main door opened. Thomas entered, carrying his presentation materials and looking confident. He greeted several board members by name as he made his way around the table, placing copies of his report at each seat. Then his eyes landed on me. The change in his expression was subtle but unmistakable. Confusion, followed by disbelief, then rapidly shifting to alarm. "Kaylee? What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice pitched slightly higher than normal. Before I could respond, Catherine stood, commanding the room's attention. "Let's begin," she announced, gesturing for everyone to take their seats. "Before we move to department reports, I have an important announcement." Thomas remained standing, his gaze darting between Catherine and me, clearly trying to piece together what was happening. "Please take a seat, Thomas," Catherine directed, waiting until he complied before continuing. "As you all know, Peterson Engineering has been undergoing strategic restructuring to better position ourselves for the challenges ahead. After extensive evaluation, the executive committee and I have identified critical operational improvements needed across all departments." Thomas fidgeted with his pen, no longer looking at me. "To lead this effort," Catherine continued, "we required someone with deep institutional knowledge, proven technical expertise, and the ability to bridge divisions within our organization. I'm pleased to announce that Kaylee Thompson has accepted the position of Chief Operations Officer, effective immediately." A round of applause filled the room. Several board members nodded approvingly in my direction. As COO, Kaylee will oversee all operational aspects of the company, including engineering, production, supply chain, and quality assurance, Catherine explained, her voice clear and firm. All department heads will report directly to her, creating a more streamlined decision-making process. Thomas's face had drained of color. I wasn't aware of this reorganization," he stammered. "The decision was finalized 3 weeks ago," Catherine replied evenly, "on a need-to-know basis." William Harrison leaned forward. "Ms. Thompson's appointment was unanimously approved by the executive committee. Her first task will be conducting a comprehensive review of all departments, identifying inefficiencies and opportunities for growth." I finally spoke, keeping my voice professional and measured. "I'm looking forward to working with all department heads to optimize our operations. Everyone brings value to this organization, though sometimes it requires the right position to maximize that value." Thomas's eyes met mine, understanding the subtle message. His department was under my purview now. His decision to replace me would be subject to my review. "Now," Catherine said, masterfully moving the meeting forward, "let's proceed with the quarterly reports. Thomas, I believe you're first." Thomas stood on unsteady legs, fumbling with his presentation materials. The confident department head who had dismissed me days earlier was gone, replaced by a man suddenly questioning every decision that had led to this moment. "Before you begin," I interjected gently, I'd like to discuss the staffing changes you proposed earlier this week. Perhaps we should revisit some of those decisions." The silence that followed was profound. Thomas cleared his throat, a bead of sweat visible on his temple. "Perhaps we should discuss departmental staffing after the meeting," he suggested, his voice strained. "Actually," I replied, maintaining a neutral tone, "since it affects the quarterly projections you're about to present, we should address it now." I turned to the board. "Thomas has proposed replacing our senior design engineer, the position I held until today, with a recent graduate who has no industry experience." Several board members exchanged concerned glances. "The Westlake project is entering its most critical phase," I continued. "Changing key personnel now creates unnecessary risk to both timeline and budget." William Harrison frowned. "Is this accurate, Thomas?" "The Westlake contract represents 20% of our annual revenue." Thomas's presentation folder trembled slightly in his hands. "I believed fresh perspectives would benefit the team," he said, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. "But obviously, with the new organizational structure, we can reassess." "Indeed," I agreed. "In fact, I've already spoken with Diana Ford about stepping into the role. Her 15 years of experience and familiarity with the Westlake specifications make her the logical choice." Catherine nodded approvingly. "Diana is an excellent engineer. I support this decision." The look of defeat on Thomas's face was unmistakable, but he managed to proceed with his quarterly report. His usually confident delivery was replaced by hesitation and frequent references to notes. When he finished, the questions from board members were pointed and occasionally critical, a stark contrast to the easy reception he typically enjoyed. As the meeting progressed through other departmental updates, I made careful notes and asked thoughtful questions that demonstrated my comprehensive understanding of the company's operations. By the time we reached new business items, the dynamic in the room had shifted palpably. Board members increasingly directed their questions to me, rather than Catherine or the department heads. Near the meeting's conclusion, Catherine introduced another agenda item. As part of our restructuring, we'll be reviewing each department's age demographics and succession planning strategies. Recent data suggests our most innovative solutions have come from cross-generational collaboration. She displayed a slide showing productivity metrics across different age groups. As you can see, teams with age diversity consistently outperform homogeneous groups. Kaylee will be leading an initiative to ensure we maintain healthy age distribution throughout the organization. I caught Thomas's eye across the table. "Experience and fresh perspectives both have value when properly integrated," I said. "I look forward to working with all department heads to optimize their team compositions." The meeting adjourned at 4:30 p.m. As board members gathered their materials and engaged in post-meeting conversations, Thomas approached me cautiously. "Congratulations on your promotion," he said stiffly. "Had I known, you'd have made different decisions," I finished for him. "I understand completely." He nodded uncomfortably. "About Olivia." "She's talented but inexperienced," I said. "I think she'd benefit from our junior engineer development program, rather than being thrown into a senior role prematurely. Don't you agree?" Thomas knew he had no choice. "Of course, I'll inform her of the change." "No need," I replied. "As COO, I should welcome all new employees personally. I'll meet with her tomorrow to discuss her actual role and set appropriate expectations." Catherine joined us, effectively ending the conversation. "Kaylee, the executive team is gathering for dinner at Bayside Restaurant at 7. We'd love for you to join us." "I'd be delighted," I said, collecting my notes. As Thomas walked away, Catherine watched him with a calculating expression. "He'll either adapt or find himself increasingly marginalized," she observed quietly. "Everyone eventually faces the consequences of their decisions," I replied. "Some sooner than others." The sun was setting over San Francisco Bay as I left the boardroom through the executive entrance. Not as a visitor this time, but as someone who belonged there. Tomorrow, the company-wide announcement would make my new position official, but today's reversal of fortune was satisfaction enough. The 10 years I'd invested in Peterson Engineering had finally paid off, though not in the way Thomas had intended when he'd called me into his office with that satisfied grin just days ago. Friday morning's company-wide meeting brought a palpable buzz to the auditorium. Employees from every department gathered, whispering speculations about the organizational changes mentioned in Catherine's email. I stood backstage with Catherine and the executive team, dressed in a navy suit that signaled my new authority while still feeling true to myself. "Nervous?" Catherine asked, straightening her blazer. "Surprisingly, no," I replied. "It feels right." At exactly 9 a.m., Catherine took the stage to enthusiastic applause. I watched from the wings as she outlined Peterson Engineering's vision for the future, emphasizing innovation, collaboration, and strategic growth. "To lead us through this next chapter," Catherine announced, "I'm pleased to introduce our new Chief Operations Officer, Kaylee Thompson." As I walked onto the stage, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Engineers who had worked alongside me for years stood in applause. Project managers who had seen my solutions save impossible deadlines cheered. Even the administrative staff with whom I'd always maintained respectful relationships showed their approval. Thomas sat in the third row, clapping mechanically, his expression unreadable. "Thank you," I began, waiting for the applause to subside. "For 10 years, I've had the privilege of solving problems at Peterson Engineering. Today, I'm honored to help shape our collective future." I outlined my vision for operational excellence, emphasizing collaboration across generations and departments. "Experience and fresh perspectives both have tremendous value," I said, making brief eye contact with Thomas. "Our strength lies in harnessing both." After the presentation, employees approached to offer congratulations. Olivia, looking slightly confused, waited until most had dispersed. "Ms. Thompson, Kaylee," she began tentatively. "I'm a little unclear about my position now." I smiled reassuringly. "Let's meet in my office in an hour. I think you have great potential, just not in the role Thomas originally proposed." As the crowd thinned, I spotted Javier giving me a knowing grin and a thumbs up from across the room. Perhaps he'd suspected something all along. The transition into my role as COO happened more smoothly than anyone might have expected. By Monday morning, I had moved into the executive suite on the top floor, a spacious corner office with windows overlooking the Bay Bridge. The contrast to my former cubicle was striking, but I made sure to bring along the small jade plant that had survived 10 years of engineering crises with me. Some continuity was important. My first official week was packed with meetings, getting to know each department head personally, reviewing ongoing projects, and assessing operational bottlenecks. I made a point of being visible throughout the building, visiting departments and speaking directly with employees at all levels. This wasn't just good leadership. It was a message that the barriers between executives and staff were being dismantled. Thomas had been notably subdued. Our first one-on-one meeting had been brief and focused strictly on his department's metrics. He avoided direct eye contact and kept his responses clipped and professional. I neither gloated nor referenced our previous dynamics, treating him with the same respectful professionalism I showed all department heads. On Friday afternoon, Catherine stopped by my office with 2 cups of coffee. "So, 1 week in, how does it feel?" she asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Challenging in all the right ways," I replied honestly. "There's so much opportunity for improvement." She nodded, looking pleased. "The board is impressed with your approach so far. William Harrison specifically mentioned your talent for asking the right questions." "I've had years to think about what I'd do differently if given the chance," I admitted. Catherine smiled knowingly. "That's exactly why you were the right choice. Oh, and I thought you'd want to know. Thomas has requested a transfer to our Seattle office." "Running away?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "He claims it's for family reasons," Catherine replied. "But we both know better." I considered this news thoughtfully. "Let's approve it. Sometimes a fresh start benefits everyone. Catherine raised her coffee cup in a small toast, spoken like a true executive. What do you mean? You spent what on renovations? My voice shook as I stared across the table at my father, Paul. $25,000, he said casually, leaning back in his chair. You wouldn't believe how much better the place looks. Really, Liv, you should be proud of yourself. I froze, gripping the edge of the table as his words sank in. Proud? He was talking like I'd volunteered to fund this project. That's my credit card, Dad. You stole from me. Paul shrugged, his smug expression unwavering. Stole is a strong word, Liv. We're family. It's not like I took it from a stranger. Besides, you've got a good job. You'll earn it back in no time. The audacity of his words left me momentarily speechless. My father had always been self-serving, but this crossed a line I didn't even know he could reach. My name is Olivia, and I've spent my entire adult life building a career I'm proud of. I'm a financial analyst, and saving money is second nature to me. Over the past 6 years, I've worked tirelessly to set myself up for a stable future. That $25,000 wasn't just some extra cash lying around. It was years of discipline, skipped vacations, and careful budgeting. Paul, on the other hand, was the exact opposite. He loved to talk big, dream big, and spend big, but never with his own money. Growing up, I learned quickly that he could justify anything, borrowing things he never returned, brushing off unpaid debts, and turning every favor into a joke. Relax, it's just family, he'd always say. This time, though, I wasn't laughing. Do you have any idea what that money meant to me? I said, my voice shaking with anger. Do you even care that you stole from your own daughter? Paul rolled his eyes like I was the one being unreasonable. Oh, stop being so dramatic. It's just money. I had a few things around the house that needed fixing, and you were in a position to help. You didn't ask me, I snapped. You stole my credit card without telling me. That's not helping. That's theft. Paul shrugged again, finishing off his wine. Well, what's done is done. No point in crying over spilled milk. My stomach churned as I stared at him, unable to believe his complete lack of remorse. For years, he'd gotten away with his selfishness because he was charming enough to talk his way out of trouble. But not this time. This time, he'd gone too far. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Paul's words echoing in my mind. You'll make it back in no time. How could he act so casually after stealing from me? I'd worked tirelessly for years to save that money, only for him to blow it all on a whim. Finally, I got out of bed and grabbed my laptop. Logging into my credit card account, I scrolled through the transactions, my stomach twisting with each one. There it was. $7,500 at a home improvement store, $12,000 for roofing supplies, $5,500 for landscaping. Every single charge screamed of his self-serving indulgence. I clicked on the details, looking for anything that might give me leverage. My heart raced as I spotted the shipping addresses for the orders. They all pointed to Paul's house. I felt a flicker of vindication. This wasn't just a suspicion anymore. I had proof. The next morning, I called the bank to report the fraud. The representative on the other end of the line listened patiently as I explained everything, from the stolen card to the unauthorized charges. Do you know who made the transactions? She asked. Yes, I said, my voice steady. It was my father. There was a pause before she spoke again. In that case, we'll need to escalate this to our fraud investigation team. They may require additional information from you, and depending on the circumstances, law enforcement could become involved. Law enforcement. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't how I wanted things to go, but what choice did I have? Paul had left me no option. If he thought he could walk all over me just because we were family, he was about to learn how wrong he was. Later that day, I told my best friend Maya about what had happened. She listened quietly as I vented, her expression darkening with every word. That's beyond selfish, Liv, she said finally. You need to hold him accountable. He can't keep treating you like this. I know, I said, running a hand through my hair. But he's my dad. It feels so messy. Messy or not, this isn't just about money, Maya replied. It's about respect, and he clearly doesn't respect you. Her words hit me hard. She was right. This wasn't just about the money, it was about setting boundaries, something I should have done a long time ago. The following day, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the fraud report I'd filed with the bank. Paul had crossed so many lines over the years, but this was something else entirely. My mind kept replaying his smug expression from that dinner, the way he dismissed me as if I were overreacting. It was time to confront him. I wasn't sure what I expected, an apology maybe, or at least an ounce of remorse. What I got was a masterclass in deflection. When I arrived at his house, Paul was outside admiring his freshly landscaped yard. "Looks good, doesn't it?" he said, beaming. "All thanks to you." My blood boiled. "Thanks to me?" I snapped. "You mean thanks to the $25,000 you stole from me?" Paul sighed, shaking his head like I was the unreasonable one. "Liv, we've been through this. It's family money. I didn't steal anything, I just borrowed it. And honestly, you're better off for it. This place needed some serious work." I stared at him, stunned by his audacity. "You didn't borrow anything. Borrowing requires permission, Paul, and you never asked me. You just took it." He crossed his arms, his expression hardening. "You're young. You've got time to earn it back. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? I'm your father, for God's sake. I've done so much for you over the years. Can't you let this one thing go?" "Done so much for me?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "Like what, exactly?" "You've been taking from me my entire life, Paul. This is just the first time you got caught." His face darkened. "Watch your tone," he warned. "You're being ungrateful. I didn't have to raise you, you know. I could have let your mom handle it all on her own." The words cut deep, but I refused to let him see me flinch. "Ungrateful? I'm the one who's had to clean up after your mistakes for years. I've forgiven you for so much, but this is too far." For the first time, Paul looked uneasy. "What are you saying, Liv? Are you really going to take this outside the family?" "I already did," I said firmly. "The fraud investigation is underway. The bank is involved. And if you think I'm going to back down, you don't know me as well as you think." The call from the bank's fraud team came early the next morning. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee in hand, as the investigator, Mr. Bennett, outlined the next steps. "We've reviewed the charges and the details you provided," he said. "Since the shipping addresses match your father's home, it's clear the transactions were unauthorized. We'll need a formal statement from you, and we'll likely escalate this to local authorities for further investigation." Hearing the words "local authorities" sent a wave of nerves through me. "Does that mean he could face charges?" I asked cautiously. "Yes," Mr. Bennett replied matter-of-factly. "It's theft. Plain and simple. The amount involved makes it a serious offense. It's up to the police to determine the exact course of action, but I'd recommend preparing yourself for that possibility." I thanked him and hung up, my hands trembling. This was really happening. For years, Paul had treated boundaries as suggestions, his charm and audacity allowing him to skate by without consequences. But now, his actions were catching up to him. I called Maya immediately to tell her what was happening. "He's going to lose it when the police get involved," I said, pacing the living room. "What if it ruins our relationship forever?" Maya didn't mince words. "Liv, what relationship? He's been walking all over you for years, and every time you let it slide, he just pushes further. This isn't about ruining anything, it's about protecting yourself." Her words hit me like a slap. She was right. I'd spent so much of my life trying to keep the peace, afraid to rock the boat, that I hadn't noticed how much of myself I'd sacrificed in the process. "I don't want to feel like this anymore," I admitted, my voice breaking. "Every time I stand up for myself, I feel like I'm the bad guy." "You're not the bad guy," Maya said firmly. You're the one person holding him accountable. That takes courage, Liv. Don't let him make you feel otherwise. Her words stuck with me as I sat back down and stared at the fraud report on my laptop. This wasn't just about the money. It was about drawing a line in the sand. Paul needed to learn that actions have consequences, and if the only way to teach him that was through a fraud investigation, so be it. I picked up my phone and dialed Mr. Bennett back. "I'll file the statement today," I said. The fallout came faster than I expected. That evening, as I sat down to dinner, my phone lit up with Paul's name. I hesitated before answering, knowing full well this wouldn't be a pleasant conversation. "Olivia," he started, his voice sharp, "I just got off the phone with the bank. Are you serious about this? You actually filed a fraud report against me?" "Yes, Paul," I said firmly. "I did. You stole $25,000 from me. What did you think was going to happen?" His tone turned defensive. "I didn't steal it. I told you, it's family money. I was going to pay you back eventually, but now you've gone and made it a federal case. Do you have any idea what kind of trouble this could cause me?" "I didn't make this a federal case," I replied, my voice steady. "You did that the moment you took my credit card without permission. Actions have consequences, Paul." There was a long pause before he spoke again, his voice low and threatening. "You're being ridiculous. You're blowing this out of proportion just to prove a point. What's next? Are you going to drag me to court too?" "If that's what it takes," I shot back. "You've spent years walking all over me, treating my boundaries like they don't exist. This isn't about proving a point. It's about protecting myself." "You're unbelievable," he hissed. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" I laughed bitterly. "Done for me? Like what, Paul? Taking credit for everything I've worked for? Borrowing money you never paid back? Or maybe it was the time you left me to clean up your messes while you ran off and pretended nothing happened." The line went silent for a moment. Then in a voice colder than I'd ever heard, he said, "You're going to regret this, Olivia." He hung up before I could respond, leaving me shaking with a mix of anger and fear. This was exactly why I'd spent so many years avoiding conflict with Paul, because every time I stood my ground, he found a way to make me feel like the villain. Later, I called Maya to vent. "He actually said I'll regret this," I told her, my voice tight with frustration. "Let him stew," she said firmly. "He's just mad he's finally being held accountable. Don't let him scare you into backing down." Her words were comforting, but the unease lingered. I wasn't backing down, but I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. 2 days later, the call I'd been dreading came. It wasn't from Paul this time, it was from my mom. The moment I answered, her voice came through, sharp and exasperated. "Olivia, what are you doing? Your father just called me in a panic. He said you're trying to ruin his life." I took a deep breath, already bracing for the guilt trip I knew was coming. "I'm not ruining his life, Mom. He stole $25,000 from me. I reported the fraud to the bank because that's what you do when someone takes your money." "He's your father," she snapped, as though that was all the explanation needed. "And I'm his daughter," I said, struggling to keep my voice calm. "But that didn't stop him from stealing from me, did it?" Mom sighed heavily, her tone shifting to one of weary disappointment. "You know how he is, Liv. He doesn't mean any harm. He just doesn't think things through. Couldn't you have handled this quietly, within the family?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Handled it quietly?" I repeated. "Mom, he spent $25,000 of my money without asking. How was I supposed to handle that quietly?" "He's your father," she repeated, as though that justified everything. "He's under a lot of stress right now with the house and the bills. He didn't mean to hurt you." I felt my jaw tighten. It's always excuses with him, isn't it? He's always under stress, or he didn't think it through, or he didn't mean it. Meanwhile, I'm the one left cleaning up his mess. "Olivia," she said, her voice softening into a pleading tone. "Please, just drop this. The investigation is going to destroy him. You know how he gets when he feels cornered. He's already talking about how you're turning the family against him." I closed my eyes. trying to block out the swirl of guilt and frustration building inside me. I'm not turning anyone against him, Mom. He did this to himself, and I'm not dropping it. For the first time, there was silence on her end of the line. When she finally spoke, her voice was colder. Well, don't come crying to me when this all blows up in your face. You've made your decision. Just remember that. She hung up, leaving me staring at my phone, the weight of her words settling over me. I wanted to cry, but instead I called Maya. Mom thinks I'm overreacting, I said, pacing the living room. Of course she does, Maya replied. She spent her whole life enabling him. But this isn't about her, Liv. It's about you. You're doing the right thing. As much as I wanted to believe her, I couldn't shake the sinking feeling in my gut. A week later, the fraud investigation began picking up speed. I received an update from the bank's fraud department. All charges had been officially flagged as unauthorized, and law enforcement had been notified. The investigator, Mr. Bennett, told me that local police might contact me soon to verify my statement. The news filled me with both relief and anxiety. For years, Paul had treated consequences as something that happened to other people. He'd always found ways to talk himself out of trouble, using charm or guilt to deflect blame. But now, there was a paper trail, and it was out of my hands. Later that afternoon, as I sat in my office at work, I got a text from Maya. How's it going with the fraud thing? Any updates? I quickly texted back. Bank is escalating it. Police are getting involved soon. I'm nervous, but it's the right thing to do. Her reply was immediate. Proud of you. You're stronger than you think. Her words gave me a small sense of comfort, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this. That evening, I went to Paul's house. I hadn't planned to confront him again, but I couldn't stop myself. The closer I got to his place, the angrier I felt. When I knocked on the door, he opened it with a smug grin. Olivia, he said, leaning against the frame. Come to lecture me some more? No, Paul, I said evenly. I came to tell you that the bank has escalated the fraud case. The police will be contacting you soon. His smile faltered for the first time, but he quickly recovered. The police? Oh, come on, Liv. You're not actually going to let this go that far, are you? It's not up to me anymore, I replied. You made this bed and now you're going to lie in it. He stepped back, crossing his arms. You're really going to let the police come after your own father? For what? A little misunderstanding? Stop calling it a misunderstanding, I snapped. You stole from me, Paul. This isn't about family or generosity. It's about you finally facing the consequences of your actions. His face darkened and he took a step closer. Don't act like you're better than me, Olivia. You wouldn't even have that money if it weren't for me raising you. I laughed bitterly. Raising me? You mean using me as your personal ATM? That ends now. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, his confidence visibly shaken. The next few days were a whirlwind. The police called to schedule a meeting, asking me to bring all relevant documents, including the fraud report and transaction history. Sitting in that small, sterile room at the police station felt surreal. As I handed over the papers, I couldn't help but wonder how Paul would handle being questioned by the authorities. Thank you for your cooperation, Ms. Taylor, the officer said as I finished giving my statement. We'll be contacting Mr. Taylor shortly to hear his side of the story. His side of the story. I almost laughed at the thought. Paul's version would undoubtedly be full of excuses and deflections, but this time, charm wouldn't save him. There was hard evidence tying the transactions to his address, and no amount of sweet-talking could erase the paper trail. That evening, I got a call from my mom. Her voice was sharp, more accusatory than the last time we'd spoken. The police showed up at your father's house today. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was for him? I sighed, bracing myself for another guilt trip. Mom, I told you this was coming. He brought this on himself. I didn't force him to steal my credit card. She didn't seem to hear me. He said you're trying to ruin his life, Olivia. How can you do this to your own family? I'm not ruining his life, I said firmly. I'm holding him accountable. If he didn't want this to happen, he shouldn't have stolen from me. It's that simple. There was silence on the other end, followed by a heavy sigh. You've made your point, Liv. But don't you think this has gone far enough? I clenched my jaw, swallowing the lump of frustration rising in my throat. It's not about making a point. It's about boundaries. I've spent years letting him cross them, and I'm done. If you can't understand that, I don't know what else to say. She hung up without another word, leaving me with the same hollow feeling I'd had after our last conversation. Despite the tension, there was an odd sense of relief as I drove home that night. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally standing up for myself. Paul had always taken without asking, always assumed I'd forgive and forget. But now he was learning that actions have consequences, and that knowledge was more satisfying than I'd ever expected. The fallout from the investigation hit Paul harder than I expected. The police made it clear that the evidence against him was solid. Unauthorized transactions, shipping addresses linked to his home, and the fraud report I'd filed with the bank. He couldn't wiggle out of this one, no matter how much charm or excuses he threw around. When I heard he'd been officially charged with theft, I felt an overwhelming mix of emotions. There was relief. Finally, someone was holding him accountable. But there was also sadness. As much as I wanted him to face the consequences of his actions, it was still hard to see my own father brought so low. Mom called me again the night I heard about the charges. This time, her tone was subdued. "Your father's a mess, Liv," she said, her voice trembling. "He's scared. He doesn't know what to do." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Maybe he should have thought about that before he stole from me," I said calmly. "You really won't help him?" she asked, almost pleading. "You're his daughter." "And he's my father," I replied. "But that didn't stop him from stealing from me, did it? He's not the victim here, Mom. I'm done letting him play that card." For the first time, she didn't argue. There was a long silence before she finally said, "I just hope you're doing okay through all this." Her words caught me off guard. I wasn't used to her checking in on me. It was usually about smoothing things over for Paul. "I'm fine," I said after a moment. "Actually, I'm better than fine. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm in control of my life again." After we hung up, I sat on the couch and let the weight of it all sink in. This wasn't just about the $25,000 or the fraud report. It was about finally standing up for myself, drawing a line that couldn't be crossed again. Paul had spent years taking advantage of my generosity and trust, and for the first time, I'd said, "No more." As difficult as the process had been, I felt a sense of closure starting to settle in. The guilt that had lingered for weeks was fading, replaced by something I hadn't felt in years: pride. The day I received the final update from the bank, I knew I'd made the right choice. They confirmed that the fraudulent charges had been reversed and the funds restored to my account. For the first time in weeks, I felt the knot in my chest loosen. I'd done it. I'd stood up to Paul, navigated the fallout with my family, and reclaimed what was mine. The old me might have let it slide, rationalizing that it wasn't worth the trouble. But this time, I'd drawn a line, and I'd stayed firm. Paul, on the other hand, wasn't doing so well. According to Mom, he was trying to negotiate a plea deal to avoid jail time. "He's devastated," she'd told me on our last call. "But I think he finally understands how much he hurt you." I wasn't so sure about that. Paul had always been good at playing the victim when it suited him, but whether or not he truly understood didn't matter to me anymore. This wasn't about him. It was about me. Over the next few weeks, I started to feel a new sense of clarity. My relationship with my mom was still strained, but I was okay with that. I wasn't going to spend my life tiptoeing around Paul's ego or bending over backward to keep the peace. Maya came over one evening, bringing a bottle of wine to celebrate the end of the ordeal. "To you," she said, raising her glass, "for proving that boundaries are non-negotiable." We clinked glasses, and I couldn't help but laugh. I guess I needed a $25,000 wake-up call, I said. Better now than never, Maya replied. You're stronger than you think, Liv. Don't forget that. In the weeks that followed, I poured myself into my work, feeling a renewed sense of focus and determination. My savings account was intact again, and I'd learned a lesson that would stick with me for the rest of my life. Trust is earned, not given freely, even when it comes to family. As for Paul, I didn't know what the future held for our relationship. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid to keep my distance. I wasn't afraid to say no. I'd taken back control of my life, and that was worth more than any amount of money.